podcast 22, I spoke with Liam Davey. He's a musician, a musical teacher, and a guitar designer. Please enjoy whatever you listen to of this talk.
The podcast will now begin.
So, the first question that I have is related to marriage. So, recently, you yourself have gotten married,
I
and
have.
I have I've proposed to my fiance, and we're preparing to get married. Um, I think in our generation, there's a greater and greater amount of people that are becoming like the nons, or like people that are like not religious. They're like moving away from kind of religious uh, cultural customs. And for some people, marriage is kind of like connected and intertwined with religion. For other people, it's not so much. Um, so some people, I think, in our generation, of course, people in the past have as well, but like some people in our generation, or maybe even more so, people are starting to question marriage and that kind of cultural custom, and its usefulness. So for you, you've chosen to get married. Um, what for you is marriage, and what are maybe like the benefits of getting married in your mind? Maybe for the listeners that are like still kind of formulating their own opinions on marriage, that are younger and they're not sure if that's something they want to do.
Um, that is a really interesting kind of question and take on it, I think, because I think the whole idea of marriage does come from religion, I would imagine. Myself, I wasn't raised Christian. I wasn't raised in any particular strong set of religious beliefs, but I
Neither was
believe
I.
that, yeah, I think getting married is a good sign of commitment to your partner, to show yourselves, to show the world, to show everybody that you are together and that you have a greater level of commitment to each other uh, than you would have had prior to getting married. So for me, that's the main driving factor. I don't personally feel any pressure from society or my family or anybody outside of myself to get married. I just felt like it was right. My relationship was in a position where I felt comfortable uh, in giving that extra level of commitment.
For sure. Awesome. Did you want to say anything more, or are you ready to jump into the next topic?
Well, I was going to ask what your kind of thoughts on that were. Do you have any like external pressure you feel to need to get married, or do you have a similar kind of philosophy to my own and just feel like
Um,
you're in a place where you're ready to do that?
I mean, from my own side, I do also feel like I'm in a place where I'm ready to do that, and it feels right. Just like you said, your decision to get married also felt right, and feels right. Um, and as far as external pressures, for my father, I feel like he advocated getting married. He would try to explain the benefits of it, and he, from his perspective, thinks oftentimes marriage brings about more happiness in an individual's life than had they not get married. Not always, it's not always the case, but yeah, so he's kind of an advocate. And so I don't feel a lot of pressure from him, but like there's like some level, I felt like there's some kind of a push, and it's coming from like a good place, yeah, some kind of a little nudge from him, from his side. And I think he would like to have grandchildren. Probably my mother would as well. So there's a little bit of a push there. And coming back to your perspective on how marriage entails or shows some level of commitment, and if you're going to have a family and children, having some kind of a commitment with your partner creates some sense of stability, which is also conducive to having a kind of more harmonious family unit, so to speak. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying here, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about all of that stuff, and I think it's quite nice, the not the pressure, but the almost push, like you said, from your
Father,
family to
yeah.
to get married. Yeah, it's a very nice way of doing it, because he's coming from a place where he's had the experience. He knows like kind of what advantages he has felt from his own
Experience, yeah.
experience of being married. And it just shows that he wants those same positive feelings, positive emotions and experiences to happen for you as well, which is really nice.
Yeah, peer pressure or family pressure or societal pressures, um, in one side of the coin kind of seems to impose limitations on our freedom as an individual, but then on the other side of the coin, that pressure, whether it be peer pressure, family pressure, or societal pressure, um, is not inherently bad. Like sometimes it is coming from a good place, and that push, so to speak, can actually move our life in a better trajectory. It's not like always this bad thing that's like uh, restricting our freedom as an individual, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to be able to have a good trajectory, it's a difficult word to say. Uh, yeah, to have a good kind of forward moving path in your life, you need pressure from outside sources for some things. It just you hope that that pressure is more often than not healthy pressure. You don't
Yeah.
want anything that's going to leave you with more stress or anxiety about having to please people.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. This kind of segues into another question that I had for you. I think
Okay.
maybe you don't see the segue here, the connection, but I'll just go for it. So you said something to me like a number of weeks ago, and because my memory is bad, I'll just kind of reformulate your words into how I interpreted them. Maybe I misunderstood you, and maybe I missed the point. But again, these are not your exact words. I've like reformulated it. But you said something like whether we are deciding to live, um, what did you say? Whether we are deciding to live our life consciously or unconsciously in a certain way, we are choosing to live our life in a certain way. So at the end of our life, we have to accept we chose to live our life based on the cards that were dealt. Um, so like there's this peer pressure. This is the kind of segue or the connection I was thinking of. There's this peer pressure that arises in our life in its various manifestations via friends, family, and society. But at the end of the day, we are making the decision whether to succumb to that peer pressure because we believe that it is actually going to move our life in a positive trajectory, um, or whether we choose to rebel against it and push it away because for whatever reason we feel like we don't want that to be a part of our trajectory or our lifestyle or a part of our life choice. Um, so whether you agree to that or not, the question based on what I'm saying here is kind of like there's elders or whatever, there's people when they're on their deathbed, they're like looking back at their life. And you are kind of touching on how some people they can accept the decisions they made, but then there's other people that have these different degrees of regret, even though unconsciously or consciously they're making the choices to have the life that they had based on the cards they're dealt. Why do you think some people have this ability at the end of their life, to accept their life choices, while other people kind of like engage in this level of regret, based on their previous choices they made?
I think, yeah, the idea of regret is definitely what I think I was trying to talk about. I remember having that kind of conversation and thinking about those kind of things recently. I actually think about it from my own kind of perspective in terms of, you think about things that you wish that you could have done, or maybe something that you had hopes to be in a certain place. For my own personal experience, that a lot of that comes down to, my ability in music, for example. Like when I was younger, I had, the idea that not that I wanted to be, famous or anything like that, but I always wanted to be in a steady band and, play regularly, just enjoy playing music with similar people, writing music and improving myself and, my confidence to do that and to reveal that part of myself in front of people. And to an extent, I've done a lot of that stuff. I think maybe not in exactly the way that I thought that I would or that I hoped that I would,
But
but
music
at the
has
same
continued to be a part of
time,
your life.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, I, I I think my point about this whole thing was I don't feel bad that I didn't really pursue music as like my main driving force for life kind of thing. I wasn't trying to make it, so to speak. It was always a very much, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, then I'll move on and maybe it will happen another time. But I
So
already feel
so there's like a
quite okay in
flexibility in your
myself knowing
mind.
that it might not be. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. I think there needs to be because you can put a lot of pressure on yourself by giving yourself such high standards or
Yeah.
expectations on something that is realistically with music is completely on the whim of other people.
Yeah.
You could love the stuff that you create, you could think you're creating the best thing in
Yeah.
the world, but again, it's your own subjective opinion, and if nobody agrees with it, then you're doomed to
Yeah.
fail. So there's definitely a level of you know having to just chill out and be realistic and
Yeah.
be
Let go.
flexible with your expectation.
Yeah. And maybe recalibrate your narrative on what success means to you as an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So this kind of segues into another question I have. Um, Based on what little I know of you, music has kind of played a relatively bigger role in your life than perhaps other things in life. So, uh, how did you start leaning into music more so than like a lot of other things, and coming into producing like guitars and designing guitars and making guitars? How did you also get interested in that?
Um, well, I think we can start with the design part. The design part and the idea of drawing and stuff like that. I've been into for a lot longer. I don't think it's where the majority of my strength lies, but ever since I was very young, I used to like drawing and doodling and doing all these different kind of scribbling. I think a lot of my teachers called it when I was at school. But I always enjoyed doing something like that, just even if it was completely unplanned, not really doing anything. Sometimes it was just scribbling, but the process of doing it, I always kind of enjoyed. I actually have a notepad now where I've written some notes and I'm scribbling on that as well. But um, I came to music quite late in my life, I think. Before I was about 13 years old, I very rarely even listened to music. I think my exposure to it was almost entirely limited to the radio in the car drive to and from school. And at that time, I know that it wasn't really something that I enjoyed. It was just something that was there. Nobody in my family is particularly musical. Nobody has particularly strong music taste or preference. And that I kind of grew up in an environment where it wasn't a big deal. Music wasn't a big thing for anybody in my family, so I was never really exposed to it that much. And when I turned 13, I remember it being around 12 or 13. I was in high school already. We call it high school in the UK.
Okay.
And I don't remember where it came from necessarily, but I just kind of suddenly started listening to rock music because it was different from the radio stuff, and it was something that somehow, through some really bizarre, some really bizarre kind of connection, I felt like it resonated with me a little bit better. And
Then
I just
doodling,
felt a lot more comfortable.
are you like, just to clarify this, you felt like the music that you were listening to resonated with you at a deeper level than the doodling creativity stuff you were doing previously? Is that, or more than the music you were listening to on the radio?
Yeah, no, more so than the music that I was listening to on the radio. But at
Got
the
it.
same
Okay.
time, it put me in a mind space. It put me in a position of um, I'd like to say it put me in a better sense of self. You know, I think when I kind of discovered music, I started kind of discovering, you know, what my personality was and what I was hoping to, you know, to show people about who I was, or even not really caring so much about what people think. I started to follow, you know, what this is what I like, not anybody else. None of my friends like it, but you know, this makes me feel this way, and I'm going to stick with it. And then, of
Totally.
course, yeah, that led into playing guitar, and the idea of making guitars came from a college counselor.
Okay.
I had no idea what I wanted to do after my A level exams. I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to go to university. I didn't know what I would study, anything like that.
Yeah.
And you know, my college counselor talked to me about, you know, what I enjoy, what I'm good at, and I was studying graphic communication at the time. And I said, you know, what I like about that kind of thing and why it was the class that I felt most comfortable in. And you know, that tied with the fact that I play guitar. This college counselor just randomly threw out the idea of, oh, why don't you try and, you know, learn how to make guitars?
So the
And I
graphics
think she
class,
intended it as,
your history with doodling and drawing, that creative outlet, and then your interest in music and playing guitar, the counselor kind of connected the dots and proposed this idea to you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I don't think this counselor ever expected it to be, you know, what I did at university. Maybe she just kind of expected it to be a bit more of an outlet over the summer, you know, something to, you know, kind of focus my mind on. So subconsciously I can figure out what else I want to do. But yeah, that's kind of how all those things came together.
Awesome, dude. It's cool to see how the different dots connected in your history and how they kind of are, how this seedling is growing and the plant is growing within your mind, and also how it's like manifesting in the external uh aspects of your life, and actually designing the guitars on paper and in the computer software and actually making the physical guitars. It's inspiring for me to hear that story and to see where you're at now, how far you've come and where you may go in the future.
I actually had a question for you actually, which
Okay, of
was,
course.
you know, I was quite late to the game, finding, you know, how to use AI for kind of interesting or useful things. And I just randomly used it to create an idea for a like a character. And
Okay.
it kind of brought to my mind the kind of art that you do.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, instead of actually using AI to create the art, have you ever tried using something like ChatGPT or another chat AI to possibly generate a scene or an idea for a piece of art that you then translate into your own style and just have that as your idea?
Yeah. So I I have, yeah, I've used different AI apps to generate ideas, and a lot of the ideas I'm not very inspired by, but some of them I do get inspiration from. And what I do is, I'll make sketches from my imagination. I'll make sketches based on other people's work that I'm inspired by. And sometimes, not very often, I will make sketches based on some AI art that I or other people have generated that I'm inspired by. And then from there, I have those different sketches and I start trying to evolve those ideas. So I'll start mixing different ideas together, AI sketches that I've made, sketches of other people's art that I've made, and integrating them and combining them and drawing them again and again. And I have to keep changing them until I intuit that I feel like it's become my own thing, where I don't feel like it's a copy any longer. It's evolved enough that it's become and mutated into a new life form. So the answer is yes, I have. And but I always want to try to keep taking that idea until it's become something uh that's, I feel like, my own. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I think that's a better answer than I expected, because uh it's very easy, I think, to take something that's been generated for you and just make it. But then to be able to make it something of your own adds a lot of extra difficulty, I think. So yeah,
Yeah,
I always find it really interesting when I see your new artworks pop up on your moments and stuff. I like it.
thank you for listening. I hope that this podcast was enjoyable for you.